You know how men love to say that women are crazy, or my ex was crazy, or something like that? Let's talk about where that comes from. Because it goes back hundreds of years and it was actually built into the law, medicine. We see it all throughout history. In ancient Greece around 400 BCE, women were believed to become mentally unstable because of something called a wandering womb. It's literally where the word hysteria comes from, the Greek word hystera, meaning womb. All throughout ancient history and modern history, we see women's emotions and experiences not being treated as real or valid. They were treated like a medical defect, which is funny because the world of medicine still doesn't listen to women. Then we move into the 1700s and 1800s, especially in the US and Europe. It just continues in an extreme way. So there was a legal doctrine called coverture, which meant that once a woman got married, her legal identity basically disappeared. She couldn't own property, she couldn't sign contracts, and in many cases, she didn't even have full legal control over her own body or her children. She went from being legally controlled by her father to being legally controlled by her husband. And then men have the audacity to talk about gold diggers. So if a woman pushed back, showed anger, refused to accept mistreatment, or even just wanted independence, it was incredibly easy to label her as crazy or unstable because the system already treated her like she didn't have autonomy in the first place. Is this seeming familiar? Is it reminding you of the present in any way, shape, or form? And women have been speaking about this for decades. Survivors speak up, historians speak up, researchers speak up, activists speak up, but the conditioning is still so strong that a lot of people still default to defending men and questioning women. Once a woman gets labeled crazy, the conversation stops being about what actually happened and starts being about blaming her and her personality. It's also often a cover for the behavior of men and boys too, am I right? You can see how this is carried into modern culture in a myriad of ways. So, for example, most of us have heard boys saying things like, my ex was crazy, as young as I think the first time I heard it, I was 12. 12. And when you're hearing this over and over and over again, it's not only a result of clearly conditioning from patriarchy, but also it's just a continuation of the cycle because it's teaching boys that they don't have to take accountability. They can just change the narrative. And it teaches girls that if they react to being hurt or cheated on or disrespected or manipulated, they are the ones who are going to get blamed. And it ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy in a lot of ways. And speaking honestly, most of us know men and boys who absolutely created the situation that they later called crazy. Cheating and then calling her jealous, lying and then calling her controlling, gaslighting her and then calling her crazy, ignoring her and then calling her clingy, being hypocritical and saying that she can't hang out with her friends or go out or dress a certain way, but he's allowed to do whatever he wants. How many of us know this story? That's someone refusing to take accountability and flipping the narrative so they don't have to look at their own behavior. And we live in a society that has 1000% supported that behavior. So when you actually look at research around DV, controlling behavior, emotional manipulation, the numbers are overwhelmingly worse when the perp is male. Yet culturally, the stereotype is still that women are the crazy ones, they're unstable, they're attempting to be controlling. That's not rooted in reality at all. That is indoctrination and a false narrative. And that's been repeating for generations, which is honestly easy to do when you have a system like patriarchy where men have the privilege and have been heavily favored. They don't want to lose that, right? I was just rewatching the movie Sucker Punch, and this was a huge theme. So the main character, she's being essayed by her stepfather. Her mom dies right at the beginning of the film. Everything is left to her and her sister, not him. He gets mad and he's about to go in and abuse her. And she's able to escape, but then he goes after the little sister. And in trying to save her, she accidentally ends up unaliving her in the process. He calls her insane, calls the cops, has her institutionalized to silence her and control her. He even pays a huge amount of money to have her lobotomized the first week that she's there so she can never tell anyone what actually really went down and what he's been doing this whole time. And this is not just a movie. By 1951, nearly 20,000 lobotomies had been performed in the US, with estimates as high as 30,000. And the vast majority of those patients were women. Women were labeled crazy and hysterical for things like anxiety, depression, emotional distress, or behavior that didn't fit the role that society expected from them. So when people casually say things like women are crazy, it's truly been something that's been used for centuries to silence women and protect men from accountability at the same time. And it's ended up not benefiting anyone. So anytime you hear a man describe his ex as crazy, by the way, I would just ask a couple follow-up questions from now on. But yeah, women finally have had a little more independence financially, socially, culturally, and the men are trying their hardest to roll that back. A lot of men are not handling that very well. We can see it in the legislation being passed. We can see it in the rise of the trad wife narrative, the backlash against feminism, red pill, black pill, and even surveys showing that Gen Z boys are becoming much more conservative about gender roles instead of more progressive. So I think the real question here is who benefits from women being labeled crazy the moment they react to being hurt, disrespected, or feel manipulated? All this has ever been is manipulation and protecting men and punishing women. I have more videos coming about how this has progressed in the myriad of ways in modern culture, workplace leadership, etc. But I want to say this is not about a gender war. Men have been abusive towards women for generations, and women finally have a little more leverage to fight back and not tolerate it anymore. And the men are not handling that well. But we know, right? Perceived loss of power feels like oppression to a lot of people, right? Until next time, y'all.